L'artiste. Super. Encore un but sensationnel. That's a brilliant bit of follow-up play by Mach. Oh my goodness me, what a shot.
Sagosen setter det hen! Han setter den! De er i semifinale igjen!
Hello and welcome to the Unformed Handball Hour. Alex Kulesh here, joined as always by Chris O'Reilly. And while the European Championship on the women's side has been going on, the men's side didn't stop. There's been a lot of action across the big leagues. The Champions League kept going, but the Bundesliga was the place with the news, the results, the action, and that's where we'll focus on today. But before then, there's also a pretty big tournament coming up on the men's side for the World Championship in 2025. And now is the absolutely perfect time to join us on our Patreon. We've had a really good time throughout the Women's European Championship, bringing out podcasts every couple of days. Chris was on the ground interviewing players, all of that. Bonus content going through Patreon. It's a good time to sign up. We'll do the exact same for the World Championships. It's just €3 a month to get involved and get access to our Discord, which has conversations about all the games going on live. It's a great place to really get out your hot takes for all the other fans that kind of love and enjoy the game just as much as you, the listeners of the Handball Hour. We'll also have a Fantasy League competition as always and bonus content coming your way. So sign up. It's just €3 for first month, $4 a month, and you can sign up, keep going if you like it. So join us now. But to talk about the action that has gone on already, we have brought on Sascha Staat from Kreis, expert in all things German handball, to chat about the Bundesliga. How are you doing, Sascha?
Well, so, to be honest, Alex. A little sick, but yeah, for the rest, I'm quite fine. I'm happy to be home after the championship, so it's all fine.
That's good, yeah. It's that time of year. A lot of people getting sick, but appreciate you coming on. And let's have a chat about the Bundesliga, where a lot has happened in the last month or so. I know you've been at the European Championship yourself, but I'm sure you've kept on top of all the big news that's happened in the German handball world. And I think the only place to start really is the big news that came out that Nicolej Krickau was sacked as head coach of Flensburg. Probably quite surprising. Only a year and a half into his tenure as Flensburg coach. We caught up with him at the very start when he took the job, and he had all these long-term plans in place, but it wasn't to be. Obviously, performances for Flensburg weren't up to scratch. Did it come as a surprise to you that Nicolej Krickau was sacked?
Yes and no. I think that the timing is a little surprising, because if you look at the history of the club, they usually don't fire coaches during the season, although it happened with Maik Machulla just a few years back. So that's maybe a change in strategy, and shows also that the club is not as patient as it used to be, because usually coaches had a long time to develop teams and they weren't under pressure so much. But if you take a closer look, there's two options to look at it. First of all, you take the view of the club. So the club says, okay, we already lost a lot of games in the Bundesliga. All right, we cruised through the European League. That's all fine. We won the European League last season, and we have a tough game in the German Cup ahead against Melsungen. So that was the status quo. They also had the game ahead against Füchse Berlin at home. So they wanted to win both games, obviously. So they said, okay, let's have a coaching change to get a spark and maybe go to the Final Four in the Cup again, which Flensburg usually does. So it didn't work. It worked for the game against Füchse Berlin, which they won by 38-37. So it could have gone either way. But still, I think that Nicolej Krickau had the problem, if you look from his point of view, that he didn't get enough time to develop the players he wanted to develop to a certain level. He didn't have a good relationship with Jim Gottfriedson. That's quite obvious, who used to be a superb playmaker just 2 years ago. And you wonder what happened since Krickau took over. I think if you have a player of his caliber, you have to find a way as a coach to make it work in some way. If it's not in a starting seven because you want a different style, he can still help you, let's say 20 minutes a game because he's just so good. So that didn't work out. And I think his biggest problem, I don't want to say mistake, was that he plays this run and gun style, which is awesome to watch. And it works in Denmark. And it works in a league where you have playoffs and where you can lose games during the regular season. So at the point where he came to the Bundesliga and he continued this run and gun style with almost no defense, it doesn't work for 34 matches, especially away from home. When you have to go from Flensburg to Baling to Erlangen to Stuttgart to the games in the south, which are not the best opponents, but still, because of the traveling issues and stuff like that, I think you lose so much energy and also mental energy that it's hard to play this style for 34 matches. And then they went to the Final Four in the Cup and also in the European League, which they won. But still, I think overall, for some reason, and that might be one, it just didn't match.
Yeah, I mean, from the very beginning of his reign as coach, I think back to like our preseason chat last year, also your preseason previews on Kreis, and everyone being so excited about this Flensburg team, even with the new faces coming in, even with a new coach coming in, automatically assuming that because of what we see on paper, that this team should be in the top two, that they should be battling for the title. What has happened last season and this season, though, is two of the most extraordinary Bundesliga seasons in terms of competitiveness. This one is completely outstanding in terms of how open it is in the top third. And I think it seems like that they have been exposed most by that. Whereas, of course, some teams, if they get a few losses like Kiel did early in the season, there are some rumblings. But because of the expectation of what we see on paper for this team, because it hasn't turned into a perfect Bundesliga winning season as well as a Cup or European League, or at least qualifying for the Champions League, that it's hurt them in a way that I think none of us could have expected. What I'm still surprised, though, is how little, well, not little patience, but a year and a half seems to have gone by very quickly for this team. And at least for me, it still felt like it was the early stages of Nicolej Krickau and with this club, and Simon Putlik with this club, and all these players, that it was still like a early stage in the process. But I guess the management didn't feel the same way.
That's where you can see that there's a lot of pressure in Flensburg with this kind of team. And you talked about the expectations we had when we talked this summer and last year. And he came there with a lot of, excitement, and everybody was waiting for him to come to Germany, because when you talk to him, I had talked to him 1 year before for a long time, and we had a talk when he was in Germany with GOG in the preseason. I can say very good guy, very humble guy, a good guy. He knows the sport extremely well. I think he's well prepared, but obviously you also hear that maybe it just didn't fit. That can happen in sports, but I think then it already in the summer. But to fire him right now, I don't know if it's a good idea. And I also question the role of Lubomir Franjes in this case, because he was like in the shadow, and there's people saying that he wanted to be back in coaching, even if he says that he didn't want to, that being a sports director is what he wants to do right now. To be honest, I can't believe him because I don't think that this is what he wants to do. He's a coach, you know. He's not somebody who's sitting in the office. To be honest, that's my feeling. I mean, you have talked to him in the past. What's your feeling about Lubomir Vranjes and what his role might be being the sports director in Flensburg?
No, that's the first thing that came into my mind when there's like, okay, what kind of role does Lubomir Vranjes have in this? And well, will we see him as the number one or the number two on the bench? And of course, the past week, he's been the number two. But yeah, I think he feels a lot more at home with a hands-on position.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Like, do you know how involved Vranjes was with Krickau on a day-to-day basis? Like, you know, I can definitely imagine Vranjes going to training sessions, being on the court and getting involved. I'd say it'd take a lot to stop himself from doing that. Do you know if that was the case in Flensburg over the last year and a half?
I hope that he went to see training sessions because I think that's what a sports director has to do. I mean, to stay in touch with the coach on a daily basis, talk to him, what's going on, what did you like? He doesn't have to be there for the whole training session. Actually, I don't know if that's been the case, but you've been watching Flensburg games this season, and I got to tell you, when you watch the games and then you see Lubomir Vranjes and Holger Glandorf on camera, quite exposed during the matches, standing there, you know, on the sidelines in the corner, they're on the camera quite often, too often, to be honest. Just go there and sit somewhere in the stands like everyone else. That's what I would do, you know, so that the focus is on the coach and on the team and not on you. Well, I'm not Lubomir Vranjes and I'm not Holger Glandorf, so I don't know how they think about it, but that's what I would do, you know. You have to, if you're the sports director, that's my attitude and point of view, you have to stay in the background because the coach and the players, that's the key to success. Of course, your work as a sports director is also a key, but yeah, now Flensburg fired the coach for a second time in 2 years. And I guess that in January they will say, okay, Lubomir Vranjes decided to help the club until the end of the season, and you know, and Anders Eggert will stay as the assistant coach, and then in the summer they will find a different solution. But still, it feels some kind of awkward, to be honest.
Definitely, and I want to touch on you mentioned Jim Gottfriedson, and that was from day one. I think something that Nicolej Krickau was wary about. The influence that a player like that has on a squad. And the funny thing is, Jan Gottfriedson's gone next year. That was the ultimate plan by Krickau. You know, they obviously sat down, they talked, they couldn't come to a role for Jim in the future for Flensburg. I hope they talked. I hope it wasn't just bitter, but I didn't. I don't expect that to happen from Nicolej Krickau, but he'll be gone next year. He's gone to Szeged. He's made the move, and it really felt like, you know, this team was set up for basically the future post Jim Gottfriedson from next year, and that's when things could really start rolling. But in this case, it seemed to be a bit more with the squad that was an issue. That, you know, there's, you know, the role of Kai Smits. I think Nicolaj Kirkeluka's role probably, you know, seen by many as a little bit too much. And even the players, I think I heard recently, were complaining. And it felt like maybe that squad mismanagement was at the core of some of the issues.
It says a lot on Monday that we saw Jim Gottfriedson and Kai Smits playing leading roles in the win over Berlin, like straight into the new luck team.
Yeah, and I also heard that Krickau in the locker room, he was still talking English and obviously also Danish to the Danish players. And I think even though all the interviews he did and all the timeouts he did it in German, that maybe wasn't too smart of him. And I think he's a very smart guy. And I think he's also able to learn because he's still a young coach. I mean, he's not even 40 years old, so he can still develop as a coach as well. But coming back to what I said in the beginning, you see how big the jump is to make from Danish handball to the Bundesliga. And that's where the age comes in again. He has a lot of coaching experience. He's coached in the Champions League also, so on the highest level. But the Bundesliga is different. And I remember what Matthias Gissel said after his first season when I did a long interview with him. He said, I underestimated how tough it is mentally to play in the Bundesliga and that I have to do especially better at away matches. So that's quite interesting. And when you look at the record of Flensburg away from home under Krickau, it's quite obvious that that was an issue as well. Because at home, they basically win all the matches almost, but they lose a lot of points away from home. And I think that, yeah, we know where Flensburg is located. That's a problem. It sounds crazy, but it's a problem you have to take care of as a club. So I don't know if they take the plane a lot of times to go to the South. I guess so. But maybe they can improve when it comes to this, that they can invest some more money when it comes to this to make sure players are rested more, maybe train a little less. I don't know.
And it seems, again, more kind of looking at the performance of the team over the last 2 seasons, and you mentioned those kind of the depth in the Bundesliga, but this season, they have actually won against most of the smaller teams. I think pretty much every game, apart from the top 6 that they played, they've won. Gummersbach, they got a draw, but it was the big teams that they continued to fail against. They have, losses against Melsungen, Bergdorf. They continue to really fail against the top teams, and I'm not really sure what that comes down to. That was probably the same case last year, a little bit, and I think that's the reason why they're in the position that they're in. But I can't really pin down why they lose to the top teams, at least.
Well, because the Bundesliga is quite even at the top. Just look at the standings. Maybe they were just the unluckiest team of those. That might be the case, It can be that you hit a post too much, that you have an attacking foul too much, and then all of a sudden you have, I think they have 9 points on the losing side, or 11. I don't know.
Yeah, 9.
Yeah, all right. So they lost at Melsungen. They lost at Hanover. So it's not that they lost games you cannot lose. Other teams are losing there as well. Magdeburg lost at Melsungen. Berlin, I think, lost at Melsungen. So Kiel lost at home against Melsungen. It's not that you can't lose the games. I think it's all about how you lose the games. And I remember the game at Melsungen quite well. It was tied, like 10 minutes to go. And then they couldn't score because Nebojsa Simic was out of his mind.
Yeah.
He saved all kind of free shots from the wings, from the line, penalty shots. So what can Nicolej Krickau do about that? They had the chances. Yep. They created the chances. He cannot score that goals. So in this case, it's on the players. It's not on him. Of course, if the feeling between the players and the coach is at 100%, then they might make those shots. But I think that, he's helpless in those kind of cases. I mean, he's not on the court. He cannot take the shots by himself. All he can do is prepare them to have free shots, and he did that.
Shall we move on to Melsungen? We've talked a lot about them already in terms of them beating everyone. I think it's only fair. They are the real deal this season, it feels. I mean, we've kind of been waiting for a proper drop-off in form for them. But here they are heading into the Christmas period. Final games before basically a month off. And 2 points clear at the top of the league. They're winning all the big home games they need to win. They've won some unexpected away matches as well. The atmosphere seems fantastic in the team. It seems like they can do very little wrong at the moment. And it does feel like, even though it's a team that we've kind of ridiculed ridiculed over the years as this big spending team that hasn't gotten much in return. Despite them having the financial power, it feels like a feel-good story, this club.
It is, and I think they invested the money a little bit smarter than they did in the past, and they were patient with the coach because it took some time for him to implement his system, the way he wants to play handball. Of course, getting Danis Christopans, the player he already coached back then at Skopje, was a big help. Eric Balenciaga is working extremely well as a playmaker to give the team a lot of structure. The defense with Adrian Šipoš is outstanding. I was not too optimistic that he was able to adapt to the Bundesliga, and he is playing extremely well. I would even say that this season he might be the best defending player in the Bundesliga. He's doing a great job. Nebojša Simic obviously is playing an incredible season, and maybe one of the keys, and we don't talk about that too much because there's others, maybe they have the best goalkeeping coach right now in the world with Carsten Lichtlein. Carsten Lichtlein, when he was still playing, he was also coaching Malte Semic at GWD Minden, a club from the bottom of the Bundesliga, and Semic played extremely well. And then Lichtlein left the club as Minden went to the second league. Semic didn't play too well there. All right, but not great. Now he's playing better again. And Moravsky and Simic have been awesome with Carsten Lichtlein as the goalkeeping coach. So he extended his contract, which is very good. And Simic, what he does so extremely well is he gives a lot of energy to the team. He gives a lot of vibe to the stands, and they give the vibe back because it's not like an arena. I don't know if you've ever been there where you think that there can be such a great atmosphere. You know, it's not like Flensburg or a sold out arena in Berlin or maybe Göppingen in the past. It's not like this, or Gummersbach recently. It's a little different. And Simic is doing a great job. Awesome personality, awesome goalkeeper, awesome human being also. And I think he helps the team a lot. And I think maybe it will be really tough to win the league, but they have a very, very good chance to go to the Champions League.
So why do you think it is tough for them to win the league? I think the point you made about home games is actually quite crucial here, because they have kind of all of their big wins, well, except for the win against Kiel, have been at home, against Magdeburg, against Flensburg, against Füchse Berlin. So it's something I didn't quite pick up on, but they have had a great schedule for the first half of the season. But what are the reasons that you think that they can't really keep going?
Yeah, that's probably the main reason. I mean, okay, they won at Kiel, and quite convincingly, to be honest. So I think that shouldn't be like that. That we should say, okay, they can't win big matches away from home. But Kiel this season is not Kiel from like 5 years ago. That's one of the reasons why we shouldn't overestimate this win. But playing at Füchse, at Magdeburg, and at Hanover in the return leg of the season. Okay.
And Flensburg.
So that's 4 matches. Well, maybe if they can win 2 of them, that might be enough, because what they don't do anymore, they don't lose points against worse teams. They win those kind of games. And recently they won in Gummersbach quite easily.
Yeah.
With this kind of self-confidence, and maybe this self-confidence might be the key for them to in the end win the league, actually. That they go to Flensburg and they know, all right, we're just good enough. We can beat them. We won against them at home. Why shouldn't we win at Flensburg? So yeah, they got a chance, but from all what we have seen over the last years, we still probably need some more trust, like in a relationship, which
sure.
Maybe didn't work for quite some time. That we have to get the trust back, and then we can believe that they can make it.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I remember at the start of last season, when they went on a big run as well, and they were top of the league after 8-10 games, and the Melsungen players were almost surprised by the positive feedback they were getting. They had been kicked around by everyone for so long that and at that time they were like, okay, well, we've actually had a pretty easy start to the season, but then the atmosphere changes, people start supporting the team starts believing themselves, and I think last season it came as a surprise, and maybe they've already this season we can see that they've definitely learned from that it's not just a bit of hype, and that they're managing to keep on. But yeah, as you said, it takes a lot to win the Bundesliga. It takes incredible consistency, and while they may do it, it would take a lot for them to actually take that step and win it above some of the more experienced teams. But next season, they're also kind of making a statement that they're here to stick around. Johannes Golla was announced that he would go back to Melsungen from next season on a very long contract.
I know it's from 26 actually. That's a problem because they need a line player for next summer because Rogério Moraes is going to leave the club, and I know that they already put some money on the table, 250,000 euros to get him next summer. Flensburg declined that offer because obviously they first of all want more money and they need somebody to replace him. So that's the biggest problem for Flensburg. They want to get Matthias Gissel. That's known. That's everybody is talking about that, and they're like collecting money within the sponsors to get him out of his contract at Berlin. Now that Krickau is gone, maybe the key is also gone to convince Matthias Gissel that this is the right place, because he was the coach who made him big. Still, he got Lasse Möller, Emil Jakobsen, Lukas Jons, and so on playing there, Simon Pitlick. Yeah, so maybe he just wants to play with his friends. But still, he could have chosen Flensburg at the first place if he wanted to. And he wanted to go to Berlin. And what he said to me was like, I can just walk around the city and nobody knows who I am. And in Flensburg, everybody would know who he is. I don't know if he wants to do that. So that might be an issue as well. So I still believe that Johannes Golla will play in Melsungen next season. And what you said, that's a statement signing. He's the captain of the German national team and a world-class player. So that he will make the team better. And imagine Ivan Martinovic wouldn't have made such a stupid move just leaving.
Oh my days. Yeah.
For sure.
They now, if you look at the players, they really have a good team. They really have a good team. They just might need a replacement for Balenciaga in case he is injured, so that you have a player who can really replace them. They will lose Ivar Ernjonsson to Magdeburg, and they have to replace him properly. But still, the team is quite deep. They have good wingers. Barufet, for example, is a player who's very interesting. Like David Mandic, he can defend on the halfback position. He can play the 1 in a 5-1 defense. Very interesting player. And there you can see that Parondo has good connections all around Europe, a great network. So he gets players that might not go there if he wasn't the coach.
Yeah.
They're doing quite a good job in the last couple of years.
And the defensive side is something I mentioned last time Alex and I spoke about this team. Like it feels like every single player in that team loves to play defense, and that cannot be understated in the Bundesliga. It was one of the first points you mentioned about Flensburg's style and how that's maybe unsustainable over a long course. But here, it's like anyone is willing to batten down the hatches and get involved in a heavy-handed game if needs be. I mean, you could imagine the Boyce Simic even playing in the center of defense if you needed to.
Yeah, and he would be a rock, you know.
3 red cards.
Not a bother. Yeah, but they have a big game coming up on Monday. Another big home match against Hanover, top of the table clash, which that could maybe derail things a little bit. But if it goes to plan for them, then all of a sudden they have a 4-point lead over everyone at the top heading into Christmas, which is a fantastic situation to be in. We're flying through time here, so I know you have to head off soon, so we can jump into maybe a little bit of Kiel as well. It's always fun to check up on Kiel with you, who are on a bit of a run. Well, among the top teams, they have the best form table at the moment.
Yeah, I didn't look at their schedule of late, so maybe you can tell me who they played. I know that it was quite convincing what they did in the last couple of weeks or last month actually, but they had a problem the month before when after winning, I think, every game in October, they even said themselves that they had an easy schedule and they had some European League group matches and then some easy opponents in the Bundesliga, and that they had to also start winning in November. In November, they lost some games, but right now, if you look at the standings, it's hard to imagine why they're actually ahead of Flensburg, who have the better roster.
Yeah.
So hats off to what they did. I know that they're quite, anxious in Kiel right now, that they're a little bit, stressed. They have to go to the Champions League. They really have to. Because I don't know if Gonzalo Perez de Vargas is coming over to play in the European League. I don't think so. He has never played a game in the European League in his career. Huh? So, and this is also, I know Andreas Wolf and Gonzalo Perez de Vargas might be the best goalkeeping duo on paper, but it also has to work out. And if they don't play Champions League, I don't know if that can work, because they both want to play in big matches. And if you don't have the big Champions League matches every week, then I'm not sure if it will work. I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, I mean, it feels hard to see them breaking through into that at the moment. I mean, I think when it comes to, the likes of Perez de Vargas coming in, he's going to have to come in either way unless something really drastic happens. But I mean, you mentioned the schedule there for them. They did have a win at home to Hannover Burgdorf, which, any other season wouldn't feel spectacular, but getting a win against them is very important right now among some more, let's say, run-of-the-mill victories. But they're suffering with a little bit of an injury crisis as well. And it's something the fans I've seen have been kind of despairing over. In their last game, just 13 players in the squad as well, which is not an unusual thing in the Bundesliga, that the top teams are having some injury problems. But when you see them letting go of Carl Valenius just a few weeks ago, heading over the border to Denmark, and then all of a sudden they're lacking in backcourt players, it seems a little bit short-sighted for them. And I don't know, Alex, what you think of the backcourt setup at the moment in Kiel?
Yeah, it still seems random, I think. I think that's been the criticism that we've talked about Kiel a lot, that it's, just the fact that it's still Duvniak running the show when they have so many players, and they depend so much on performances from the likes of Emil Madsen or Erik Jonsson to get their shooting. But you're right that the injuries have been a problem. Harold Rankin has been out all season. The skipper really hasn't got going this season at all. He's in and out. So Nicolaj Krickau out of the World Championship now and out for a little while. So they continue to face these injury issues. But I think the big turn for them has been just Andy Wolf playing much better. And I think that is what this team is about now, that if Andy Wolf is on form and is flying, they do play well and their defense starts to click. But then there's just kind of no option beyond that. And we know that he's a fantastic player, so there's a lot you can be quite confident that he will play well the majority of the time. But again, for them to really challenge for a Champions League spot, there's a lot of things going wrong for them as well. These injuries, the fact that they can't get a settled team in place because of those injuries, and it just feels, despite the good run, and I actually wanted to be quite positive about Kiel. I'm generally quite negative because they should be doing much better, as you said, Sascha. They should be playing in the Champions League. They have no right to be down in the positions they are, but it just does seem like a difficult season.
I'll have a hot take right now. I think that THW Kiel will struggle for years to come. I think so because when you look at the age structure of the team, they're very old. That's one issue. That's also a reason why the players are injured so often. And then it's very risky to put all your hopes on the daily form of Andreas Wolf, who's an outstanding keeper, and put a lot on the emotions of Domagoj Duvniak, who I love as a player, but he's not 29 anymore. And when he was 29, he already looked like what his age now. So,
he looked
but
40
he already
when he was
looked like
29.
this when he was 22. So it's, but still, I love him. He's a great player. There's no doubt about it. He's one of the best leaders in handball history, probably. So, but the problem is, are they getting the players they used to get 5 or 10 years ago? No. And they always used to get the stars. Now they struggle to find a proper replacement for one of their key line players. Patrick Wienzek will probably retire at the end of the season, and Pekela will get a contract extension. And they get some player who is not very well known in Germany. He might be very good, but in the past they would have gotten Justus Fischer from Hanover, no problem. They just would have signed him, period. And that's not happening anymore. And that's probably the biggest problem for this club for the future. You can already see it a little right now, and you will see it in 2 or 3 years. I think the big days are over in Kiel, and they really have to find a way to either change everything they got and also maybe find a coach who's willing to play a different style, a modern handball style, which makes you win more games in a different way than just shooting from the outside, because the chances of scoring from 10 meters are much lower than from 7 meters. So this is why handball has changed so much. They're all scoring from closer positions to the goal, and Kiel is more of a shooting team, and Philipp Jescher has been more of a shooting player, and the style hasn't changed since Alfred Gislason left and Philipp Jescher took over. So either Philipp Jescher will start to understand that they have to do something else, or he will be fired at the end of the season. I really think so. And then we will see. But the biggest issue with them is that they can't sign the players they used to sign. Other teams have the same level of attraction, like Füchse Berlin, Magdeburg, Flensburg, even Hanover and Melsungen are attractive teams for younger, developing players right now. There's a little bit more patience there, for example, in Hanover, because they don't have to win. Kiel has to win. And that's a big problem. So I know my take is very hot, but let's see 2 or 3 years ahead where they will stand. Maybe they will win a cup or two. Maybe they will win this season's cup. It might happen. They might also win the European League. All right. But they have to play in the Champions League.
It doesn't bring you into the Champions League, and that's the big one.
And you're right. They're shooting just 61% field shooting as a team. That is the 12th best percentage in the Bundesliga. And you can't do that, and that all comes down to the types of shots they're taking. That is, when you compare it to the 70% that Füchse Berlin shoots with, as we know, a very modern style of getting through, breaking through. How can you compete? It's just simple maths.
We heard as well that Maik Machulla is either set to go to Rhein-Neckar-Löwen. I'm not sure. Is it 100% confirmed now that he's taking over next season?
Maybe once you're on air with the show, but
Exactly.
yeah, that's what I heard as well. I already recorded my podcast for tomorrow, and we will talk about Maik Machulla being the new coach of Rhein-Neckar Löwen. I heard that Heine Jensen, the former coach of the German women's national team, who is now coaching in Norway, is what Uwe Gensheimer wanted as the new coach for the club. But he wasn't able to push it through. So the board of the club wanted a big name to tell everyone, or maybe to pretend that they're still one of the bigger clubs, because the 6 teams ahead of them, they're better than Rhein-Neckar Löwen. They will lose quality in the summer when Juri Knorr will leave, even though he's struggling a little bit with his consistency, but he has a lot of quality. And they still don't have a replacement for him. And it's already December. It's Christmas, and they couldn't tell who's the coach until right now. So if you want to sign a new player, I mean, you have to tell him who's your coach. Of course, players look at the standings and they see, Rhein-Neckar Löwen have been 12th last season. Right now, they're doing okay, but not so great. Probably they won't play internationally next season again. Why should I go there? And does Maik Machulla help enough to make sure that players will sign with a team which will only play in the Bundesliga and in the Cup? I'm not sure about that, although he's won the German league twice, but it's fake. This is fake to the fans, to pretend that you're still a great team because you sign a big name as a coach. And I got all the respect in the world for Maik Machulla. He won 2 German championships with Flensburg. But I think Heine Jensen, that would have been a bold move, but a very interesting move to develop. But they told the story of development already 3 years ago when they signed Sebastian Hinze, and probably they can't tell it again because they have to sell out their VIP boxes at SAP Arena. They have to have a full arena also, and maybe Heine Jensen doesn't fill the seats, because he's not that big of a name. But it would have been a very interesting move. But yeah, Uwe Gensheimer is now in charge, and he can see right away that this job is much different from being a player on the court where you just have to score.
Yeah, I think that says a lot though about Gensheimer's maybe view towards things as well, and maybe a positive thing for his future career as a manager, let's say, or a director, if he's thinking a little bit more broadly. But we heard the Danish perspective on Machulla's departure from Aalborg when it happened. I think we're keen to hear from the German side of things as well, and what you made of that. And particularly, I think, given the relationship between German and Danish handball, maybe there was a little bit of a sour feeling about his leaving the club.
I don't think it's a sour feeling. I think it was more like shocking, because I talked to a colleague of mine you might also know, Rufen Möller, and he traveled to Aalborg and he talked to Machulla when they played against Magdeburg in the Champions League. And he said he came back home and he wrote his article, and from Machulla's part, everything sounded fine, and he didn't have the feeling that it was going into the wrong direction. And then, like a few weeks later, he's fired. So I think that they played against Magdeburg like end of September, early October, and he was fired early November. And yeah, what I have heard is that some of the players didn't like the style. Some of the older players actually didn't like the style too much. Then he didn't have Niklas Landin, which is a key player for this team. And yeah, they didn't perform as they had to in both the league and also the Champions League. But, well, I mean, they got the players in Denmark anyway, so I think that doesn't really matter, to be honest. And in the Champions League, they also got players. So why is there no patience at all? And I think that he wanted to be a little bit more discipline on the players. And in Denmark, I think that doesn't work. They like this Hygge style, this, okay, we have a beer after the trainings. And maybe on this level, you just can't have that if you want to be absolutely successful. Either you're playing like, I exaggerate absolutely right now, just for fun, or you want to win it all. I'm not sure if a team like Aalborg can win the Champions League if they continue with this kind of style. Maybe they need a coach who's a little bit more strict to get them over the hump. I know they've been to the Champions League final just a few years ago, and they've also been in the Final Four once again. But I don't know. With this kind of attitude is maybe what lacks to win it all. Barcelona has this kind of attitude. Kiel used to have this attitude. All the German teams who play in the Champions League got this attitude. You need to be in 100%. And I was actually surprised when they signed Maik Machulla because he doesn't speak Danish. And I don't know if you know that there's a law in Denmark that you can only buy ground if you've lived in Denmark for at least 5 years. That shows a little bit that there's some kind of distance, social distance between Danish society and foreign people. And it's not meant in a bad way by me, don't get me wrong. But I think it's to be part of Danish society and to be a foreign coach in Denmark is not that easy. I think it's a huge step. And I don't know if there's any foreign coach, maybe Icelandic coach in the Danish league, right? With Gudmundur Gudmundsson and Fredericia. But that's it. And he's been in Denmark before, so it's a little different. He's from Iceland, so it's also a little different. But maybe this German way of thinking and living and also living sports is too different to the Danish style. That sounds crazy enough, I know, because there's so many Danish players in the German league. But maybe for a player, it's a little different because he's just one part of the team, but the coach is a big part and he has to take all the decisions. And that's why maybe this just didn't match.
Yeah, it definitely shows the type of pressure that coaches are on at the highest level. We've seen teams invest a lot to get to the top, and there's only a limited amount of places at the very top. And if it doesn't spark straight away, that's when teams make these decisions. Like Krickau, like Maik Machulla, we're seeing it. But, in history, what we've seen is that if you stick with a coach for a long time, that brings success in at the top of handball. But maybe right now teams are trying to figure out that long-term coach without actually having the faith. It's a strange one.
Yes.
Yeah, but you can see that the pressure in the Bundesliga is so high because it's so even right now. I love it because that's what we wanted for years. We wanted to have a different German champion and not only Kiel 9 out of 10 times. Then Rhein-Neckar Löwen came, then Flensburg came, then Magdeburg came. Füchse are strong, Melsungen is strong, Hanover has a great project. That's awesome. But of course, on the other side, teams are struggling to be patient because they can't be patient because they were used to winning. And now they're not winning all of them. We just have 2 spots in the Champions League and 3 or 4 more spots in the European League. And then there's some odd teams out, like Rhein-Neckar Löwen, or maybe even Kiel, or whoever. And that's a great development for the league. It's a better product to sell if you don't know who's winning. So it's great. But on the other hand, the pressure on the managers, on the sporting directors is really, really high.
Lastly, we just want to check in with you on the national team. So only a few weeks away from the World Championship. The preparation squad was announced earlier this week for the Olympic silver medalists. Looking like a nice squad again, and some youth being brought into the team, particularly in the backcourt, sticking with, let's say, the next generation of players. How are you feeling? It always seems like when I ask you about national team stuff that that you're not the most optimistic, but I don't think anyone is ever optimistic about their national teams except for Danes and Norwegians. So how are you? How are you feeling heading into this
No,
World
I
Championship?
was quite, let's say, realistic when it comes to the men's team in the last couple of years, and I was pessimistic with the women's team because I don't think they have played to their limit for a few years now. But with the men's team right now, I'm absolutely excited. I was in Lille for this epic and historic match against France in the quarterfinal, which is a game we will talk about in 20 years' time, I think, because it was just epic. This you couldn't make this up. And I think this game gave so much confidence to the German team that they will take a lot of energy out of it for the next maybe 5 to 10 years because there were so many young players on that team. David Speth is one heck of a goalkeeper, and he's not even 25 years old. He's not close to 25. He's 22 or 23 years old. Yuri Knorr is a young playmaker, and he will go to play in the Champions League with Aalborg, so he will get better. Julian Köster is already world class on the defensive end, not offensively. Sebastian Heimann is finally in a physical position to be somebody who can help. Marco Grigic in Eisenach has improved drastically this season, and I think it comes from this Olympic experience. And Renas Ushins, I don't even have to talk about him. He's a very humble guy. He's a smart guy. He's also a funny guy. And the way he plays handball is what we were lacking for 5 years at least in this national team. Justus Fischer, a young line player who will be great. Maybe we lack a little bit on the wing positions, okay, but goalkeeping is awesome. The backcourt is very young, so it will get better. There's no selfish guys, no ego shooters on this team. This is also very important. You're sure? Yeah, well, I know this now, but you have to see the way they are off the court. Maybe on court it looks a little different at times, but when you talk to players in the mixed zone and you look into their eyes, you can see what kind of person they are. And for example, Yuri Knorr, I don't know if you hinted at him, I don't think that he's an ego shooter. He wants to win. That's number one priority for him. He wants to win. And in January, he was maybe playing like for himself too much a little bit because everyone in the arena was looking at Yuri Knorr. I think it will be great for him that he leaves Germany. I think it's a great step for him, personally. Not all the eyes on the German handball world will be on Yuri Knorr anymore. That's very good. Andreas Wolf can be strange from time to time, but I think for a goalkeeper, he just has to stop the ball. And he does. So it's all right. But this young core from the under 21 World Championship team from 1 year ago is so great. Like when it comes to what kind of people they are, that you can hear my excitement. It's quite obvious. Maybe they go out in the quarterfinals, all right. But in the next few years, we also got some home tournaments. I think they will be in the semifinals like every second year. And that's all right, because I can't expect my team to win a medal or a title every year. I mean, we have won 3 Olympic medals, or 4, I think, 3 silver medals in a span of 40 years. So 1 every 20 years. This is, I mean, we are not Denmark. We are also not France. But, a bronze medal every now and then, maybe going to a final every now and then, that's all right if you play to your limit. And we have underperformed for a long time, and now we are on a good way. That's why I'm excited. I don't know exactly who we play against after the main round, because we will play Denmark in the main round. But afterwards, I don't know who we face. Depends on the schedule if we have a good chance to go to the semifinals or not. So I'm excited. I'm optimistic. That doesn't mean that we will do well, but the feeling has changed totally.
No, I definitely agree with that, and I think I mentioned Jurek Knorr, but yeah, as he said, his ability to just say, "Oh, Renner Zurschens is scoring 14 goals. Yeah, I'll pass the ball to you. I don't need to be the main guy right now," which is what happened in the Olympics. Does show his unselfishness on the court, that he was just forced into a position where he had to do everything. He didn't necessarily have to.
He changed his style of play at the Olympics because he understood that in January it didn't work out that way. And he played a little more loose. Also maybe because they weren't playing in Germany. And the whole country wasn't watching what is going to happen with Jurek Knorr and the very quick development of Renas Uschins being the next superstar in German handball. It all helped Jurek Knorr. So you see, he's smart enough to understand that he has to step down a little, but it makes the team better. And this is why I'm optimistic. He's been a smart guy ever since, and now it seems to click. So we have a young backcourt, and Marko Grigic didn't even play a major role at the Olympics,
Yeah.
Not at all.
He's been absolutely phenomenal
Yeah, he's
this season.
awesome
I'm
in
excited
Eisenach.
to see what he can do at the highest level for sure.
So I'm optimistic and excited.
That's good to hear. Nice to hear an optimistic German when it comes to the men's team.
Let's not talk about the women's team, please, because that might be a different thing. So,
all right, Sascha, we'll leave it there and let you get on. Enjoy hopefully you'll be able to get through the game without too many
thank you.
sneezes or coughs, and I'm sure we'll check in as well in and around the World Championship.
Yeah, sorry that my voice is not the same it used to be, but I need to be ready for Christmas and the good food. So
that's it. All right, take care, Sascha.
Yeah,
thanks
take
again.
care as well.
It was a pleasure.
Have a Merry Christmas.
A lot,
you too, mate.
Cheers.
Right. And thank you all for listening. As Alex mentioned at the top of the show, plenty of bonus content coming up over the next couple of weeks as we build up to the Men's World Championship, which is going to be very exciting. One for us all to look forward to over the Christmas break. So get on to Patreon, and we will see you again very shortly with another Morning Club on Patreon and another full episode soon as well. Goodbye.